Ladies and gentlemen, the program will begin momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the host of WICT Tech It Out 2020, Mary Pratt Henaghan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 2020 Tech It Out from the WICT Washington, D.C. Baltimore chapter. I'm Mary Pratt Henaghan, and I'm privileged to serve as a director at large on our chapter board of directors. I'm very proud to share that I've been a member of this WICT chapter for 28 years, basically my entire career, and I'll be your host today. We're so glad you could join our Zoom webinar. Tech It Out is a signature program among all our WICT chapters across the country, and its purpose is to examine the state of cable technology through the filter of the work that women are doing in our industry. We've hosted many Tech It Out events in our Washington, D.C. Baltimore chapter over the years, but of course, this is our first ever virtual version. So thanks for joining us on this adventure. In the next 2 hours, we hope to bring you a stimulating and robust conversation focused on the power of streaming over our state-of-the-art broadband infrastructure. Our theme today is the future of streaming and its impact on customers, companies, and the workforce. In our first hour, a team of blue ribbon technology and streaming experts will look at how we are configuring our infrastructure and our services to provide consumers the best possible streaming experiences. And in our second hour, a panel of veterans will call out the challenges and opportunities for women in this brave new world of streaming services and content. All of that and more in just a few minutes. But first, I'd like to recognize our sponsors today, Comcast Beltway Region and NCTA, the Internet and Television Association. And I'd like to thank the Industry Affairs team from NCTA for producing and help managing this virtual event for us. I'd also like to shout out our thanks to the members of the committee that organized today's event. At this time, for some words of welcome, it's my pleasure to introduce our great president of the WICT Washington, D.C. Baltimore chapter, Senior Delivery Manager for Clarity, Ann Thompson.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Mary. Welcome to our 2020 Tech It Out program. This yearly program offers us the opportunity to highlight the innovative technology and people that the cable industry is known for. I'm always fascinated by the topics that we delve into, and this year is no different. When we began having discussions about today's program back in June, it was still a time of great uncertainty for all of us. The virus has impacted every aspect of our lives. And while we didn't know exactly how we would be able to run our event, whether in person, a combination of virtual and in person, or fully virtual, the topic quickly became clear: supporting the increase of streaming in a virtual world and how our industry has risen to that challenge has never been more important. I hope you will enjoy today's program and hearing from our amazing group of panelists in our 2 sessions today. Thank you for joining us. Mary?
Thanks so much, Anne. And thank you for your strong leadership of our chapter. We're going to transition now to our panel discussions. We'll engage with the first panel now and another panel during our second hour. We'd be happy to have your participation in these discussions. You can pose questions to our panelists by clicking on the Q&A function on the Zoom menu on your screen. First up is our session on making streaming a great experience, where we'll examine the steps we're taking as an industry to ensure the best possible customer experience for our streaming customers. Here now to lead our discussion and introduce our blue ribbon panelists is the senior editor for Access Intelligence, which produces our outstanding industry trade publication, Cablefax. Please join me in welcoming our friend, Sara Winegardner. Sara, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, WICT DC Baltimore, for having me. It's always a beautiful day to talk about tech, and today is no different. I have quite the group of panelists here to discuss something we've all gotten even more familiar with during the pandemic, streaming. It's changing the video marketplace one step at a time, and it's shaping how many of us are viewing the future of customer experience. I'm so lucky to be joined today first by SCTE-ISBE SVP and Chief Technology Officer Chris Bastian, the organization's technology and engineering guru, who is still pretty fresh off this year's virtual Cable Tech Expo. I also have fuboTV SVP of Advertising Sales, Diana Horowitz, who lives this topic every day in her role at the sports-centric streamer. And Diana is coming in with some fresh eyes too, having just joined Fubo in June. So I'm excited to hear her takes. We also have CableLabs Director of Technology Policy and Immersive Media, Debbie Fitzgerald, who I know is incredibly excited about what the future of video and immersion could look like in just a few years from now. And last but most certainly not least, I'm joined by Toni Stubbs, Vice President of Technology, Engineering, and Operations for Cox, Virginia. And Toni, I'm sure you have quite a few tales to tell us about the last few months and the long hours your team has pulled to keep the network up and running. So I want to thank you all, the panelists, for joining me. I want to start and take a moment to acknowledge a major moment in the industry that's happened overnight and this morning, hearing of CableLabs and SCTE-ISBE merging in the future. So I'd love to take a moment, Debbie, Chris, if either of you have any words to share on the joining, I'd love to give you the floor.
Sure. Thanks, Sara, and thanks for inviting me to be here this afternoon. Really excited to be on this panel. Yeah, we are extremely excited that this merger is underway. We look to get it closed by the end of the year, and we have SCTE and CableLabs. We've historically worked very close together, but with this merger, I mean, it removes, even though the wall was very low between us, it's just completely blows away that wall, and we're completely focused together. My boss, Mark Zuban, likes to call it, it's a force multiplier that 1 + 1 will equal 3. And we're just going to pool all of our services together and make it one-stop shopping for all of our members to receive all of the services that we bring to the industry. Debbie?
Great, yeah, I agree. Super excited. In fact, I have to laugh. The very last business trip I took this year was up to Exton to attend meetings up at SCTE. I've been collaborating with SCTE for years, and just having them part of the family is only going to make that easier on us, but also easier on the industry as well as a whole. So I think that it's just a great thing all around. So super excited about it too. Also, if anybody's interested, encourage you to go to scte.org/vote-info, where you can get all the scoop on it too.
Congratulations to the SCTE-ISBE and CableLabs families. You two are powerful forces on your own, and I'm very excited to see what you two come up with even closer together. but we have a panel, we have streaming to talk about. And so I'd love to start now with a bit of a level setting question. You know, what do you all view as the state of the video marketplace at this point in 2020? You know, what trends are you seeing, and you know, how have the last 8 months changed any of what we've been seeing in the marketplace?
Well, I guess I can go first since I think my mic is still open. You know, I think it's really timely. CTM just put out news this morning that Comcast has seen an 80% increase from this time last year in streaming video. So clearly, you know, things have changed and streaming video is in demand and here to stay. We're also streaming video right now, if you think about it, right? With everybody watching this over Zoom. So the thing that I think is the most impressive about the industry in general is just how the cable industry has been positioned already to carry the load that they experience from the very beginning. So not only streaming video, but just streaming everything going forward.
I'll jump in there. Hello, everyone. So I would add that with the streaming, what has changed is that it is streaming up. So as Debbie mentioned, we're streaming right now. We're actually sending video up to the internet, whereas before, most of the streaming was down. And even though there were gamers that might have been online and they were streaming and showing from their homes, we have, you know, that times 20 or 30 or 40, where people are doing videos, they're doing pictures, they're gaming. And so it has really added per household the amount of streaming up that we've seen. A big difference.
Well, I can jump in. Very happy to be here. Thank you again for including me. So from a industry perspective, I think one of the things that we've really seen, first of all, is just how much content, you know, the consumer is watching. You know, and there's actually never been a better time for the premium television type content. So you know, that's something that we've really seen. I think one of the big game changers has certainly been the growth of the smart TVs, the connected TVs, and particularly on streaming. And, you know, we saw this during, you know, the height of the pandemic, but it's really persisted that, you know, the penetration of a connected TV really enables the consumer or the viewer to be much more agnostic as to where they obtain their content. You know, you can toggle, if you're watching in your smart TV, you toggle between, you know, a direct-to-consumer app, you know, such as Netflix, right back to your cable provider or streaming provider. So that's, I think, been a big game changer. And then, you know, speaking from a streaming company, you know, inside the industry, we've really seen that because now we're seeing that over 95% of our viewership is actually on a connected television device. And actually 90% of our viewers are watching that content live. So we're really seeing, you know, a television-like experience on the streaming side, and of course, you know, providing that, you know, seamless television viewership experience. That's what we aspire to, you know, from our perspective. So, so that's been, I think, a key point. And then, of course, you know, from my perspective on the advertising side, we also see that, you know, this provides that kind of engagement and attention span that viewers will provide when they're watching, you know, premium content within a very, you know, quality environment. And then on top of that, some of the personalization as far as, you know, content recommendation and advertising targeting that comes together. So I think, you know, those are some of the key components that we're seeing.
And I'll just add that there is a lot of fantastic content out there, you know, especially with everybody, you know, being at home now and a lot more binge watching. And I know my household personally has been binge watching through a lot of series. A lot of entrants, and, you know, new entrants from big players. I mean, there's Disney Plus, there's Peacock, there's AT&T HBO Max, Apple TV, you know, T-Mobile recently. But I do think there's a little bit of a challenge in that. I think we'll get more into customer experience later. it's often a challenge then to connect that customer with that content. It's just, because the content rights are constantly, moving around, and where you found, an episode or a movie yesterday, it might be in a completely different place tomorrow. So I think as we get into the customer experience issues on this panel, we want to discuss that one as well.
Absolutely. Chris, you read my mind, and you also, maybe you have an insight into my household, because that happened to me exactly last night, where I was trying to find something and it had switched services without me realizing. So yeah, for all of you, you've all talked about this in different ways, whether people are using the upstream more, trying to create experiences that make it easier for the viewer to bounce around and find the content wherever they are. And over the past 8 months, of course, customers have been focused on how they're streaming even more so than ever before. Has this changed how any of your companies or organizations are looking at your technology focuses for MVPDs, VMVPDs, and streaming as a whole? Are you looking at more tools for improving that customer experience, that at-home experience? How has this, flash in the pan moment affected all of you?
Well, I can speak just briefly from a Fubo perspective. Again, as I mentioned, our goal is to try to mirror as much as possible a premium television viewing experience. And, we have proprietary technology that, enables us to do that. From an ad insertion perspective, of course, we do use dynamic ad insertion. SCTE, is a big part of our lives on the ad side. We're constantly offering new capabilities for our viewers. So we're the only VMVPD that enables streaming in 4K. And then as well, we've just launched a multi-view capability on Apple TV, so consumer actually watch 4 matches at the same time. So so CNET actually just voted us the best streaming service for sports fans. So that's from our perspective. We're always looking at ways to improve that viewer experience, as you mentioned.
And I know that, we have been investing in our network over the past several years, just contending to build out fiber and be able to offer greater speeds and better customer experiences for our customers. And so this had always been our plan to do. We may have had to accelerate in some areas for our build out, because we do have more people that are working from home and schooling from home. And in certain areas, we would need to be able to increase that bandwidth. And so that may have been further out on the plan. We may have had to adjust our plans some. So it is constantly watching, staying very connected with our customer care and our field teams and partners to see and watch what they're hearing, so that we know. We have monitoring tools, but we also need to make sure that we're listening to the voice of the customer, which may come through our care center. And so where we take all of that information, pull it together, and then look to see where we can improve on the network.
So I can jump in from a CableLabs perspective. What CableLabs does really, and actually, I'm not sure if everybody who's attending today is that familiar with CableLabs, because I'm not actually part of the WICT organization in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, but I'm part of WICT in the Rocky Mountain region. We're based in Colorado, but these virtual events make it easier to bring everybody together from all around the world, really, which is very cool. But with CableLabs, we're a research and development organization, really kind of innovating the 3 to 8 years out range of what's coming next. And in fact, it was several years ago that we identified upstream being a real requirement, and already came up with ways to increase that upstream speed with full duplex DOCSIS and extended spectrum DOCSIS. And so those are things that we've been working on for a while now. The great thing about our collaboration with our vendors and our members, like Toni said, is really as soon as they're standardized, the vendors start building to it and the members start rolling it out, which honestly is why we were able to accommodate the demand and the increase that already happened at this point in time. So yeah, it's exciting to be in a position where we're continuing to look at what the requirements are and make sure that our networks are going to be able to handle that going forward.
And I'll just add that, a lot of times in the industry, we focus on the access network, the DOCSIS, the HFC. But again, with COVID and maybe having a few more people in the home than you're usually used to, you really need to consider that whole home solution, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's MoCA, whether it's IoT sensors with Bluetooth or Zigbee. So you really want to look at that overall home solution and make sure that there's enough bandwidth to handle all the people requesting different services at different times.
Yeah, and we actually have a question from the audience that I think plays really nicely into the conversation we're having here. So from John Fant, and I apologize in advance if I mess up anybody's names, but he was wondering, have any of you found that the MVPDs are really able to provide the bandwidth necessary to the home with all the new streaming initiatives going on right now? So Toni, I know you mentioned the long-term planning that has really led up to this moment and really allowed cable to meet the moment. But I guess, if you could talk, were there any, I'm sure there were any stress moments and the times when you and your engineering team were head down trying to figure out how you were going to meet the moment?
Yeah, so I am so happy to say, at least for Cox and Cox, Virginia in particular, that the network performed, and we build the network to be able to perform at peak usage. And so we know what that peak usage would look like when people are coming home, kids were coming home from school, they were getting on the network. So we always had to have the network built to be able to support peak usage. It just was that peak usage didn't happen for 8 hours a day, right? It was generally a couple of hours in a day. And so where I think some people thought, oh my gosh, the network is going to crash, right? Things are going to just come to a halt. People aren't going to be able to work, or kids aren't going to be able to go to school. Teachers aren't going to be able to teach. That didn't happen. And the country, all of the MSOs, the network was built to be able to handle. Now, were there pockets? Yes. Were there areas where people may have seen some slowness? Yes, and those were the times that we had to bring our engineers in and say, okay, let's look at these areas. We might have a higher concentration of students or workers that are online, and we need to look at adding a fifth upstream channel so that we have greater bandwidth on upstream. But that was really something that was not a stressor so much so, because the network was really outperforming, I think, people's expectations. So that's been a huge positive and a huge plus. And Debbie mentioned DOCSIS. We have been working to make sure that DOCSIS 3.1 was rolled out and available. So for Virginia, we had DOCSIS 3.1 across all of our markets, which allowed for up to gig speeds for our customers that were on regular HFC cable modem and they didn't have fiber direct to their homes. And so I'm pretty pleased at the performance, and we continue to watch, and it's going to be constantly monitoring the network and making sure that we're meeting those needs. But it's coming along well.
Happy to hear it, and I know my network has done really well, and we're 8 months in, so I feel like we've made it at least over this hurdle. But I'm gonna start this question with Chris. Anyone can chime in, of course. But Chris, now that we are in this moment, we've gone over that first hurdle. How do providers start looking towards planning for the future? Should we expect this new normal in terms of at-home broadband usage to stick around? Is it going to level out? What are your expectations for a year out or a few years into the future?
Yeah, so just I'll sort of bridge the last question with this one, just adding a couple of numbers to what Toni was relating to at Cox. It's just was several years of growth, basically being put onto the network in a few weeks, and so if people aren't aware, NCTA maintains a really nice dashboard of what's going on nationwide and also down into the pockets. So it was since March 1st. 16% increase in peak downstream traffic, and even higher, again, to Toni's point, much higher on the upstream, 38% increase in peak upstream since March 1st. And if you drill down on the dashboard, you see pockets much higher than that. In California, at the state level, 52% increase in upstream traffic since March 1st. And that is it's been the subject of many articles of what is the new normal and where will we be a year out. It's not going to go back to the way it might not stay at the peak if we do have an effective vaccine coming up and people do start going back to work. It's not going back to the pre-COVID levels. It's going to stay elevated. It might abate. It might flatten out. But my crystal ball look at where we're going a year out, a couple of years out, is these shifts. A lot of these shifts are here to stay, and it's a testament to the flexibility of the network that the operators have built. That is that flexible, that services can shift around, new services can be added on, people can shift around, and whenever they need to draw on those services, they're there. The bandwidth is there. And not just bandwidth, but the latency, the reliability, the security, all those factors that are built into the network. And we're constantly investing, with the research and development that CableLabs does. We're constantly investing in new tools to add to that network, so that we can draw on those when they're needed. A notable example is the release of DOCSIS 4.0 to build on to the very successful history that DOCSIS has had.
And that leads me into a question from the audience, from Rob Stoddard at NCTA. Just as important as this network resilience that we're all talking about is the ability of our home networks to accommodate the ever-shifting flow of the upstream and downstream traffic that's occurring now in the homes. And so what have you all learned about the home networks of end users in this moment? And what tools are available for companies to stretch their in-home capacity? What's available now, and what should people be keeping an eye on maybe for the future?
I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in. If not, I'll start us off. What we're seeing in home, your in-home Wi-Fi router really is the hub that will suggest how good your internet performance appears to be. So we can provide services to the home, but then depending on what you have inside of your home, connecting to that Wi-Fi router or how far the devices are from a Wi-Fi router impacts your experience. And so we will have customers that don't have an optimal experience because of that in-home Wi-Fi router. And so, we offer services, as I know many of the other operators offer services to be able to help customers with that and understand that. There's also, when you look at older devices, and if you have an older device that's connecting to that in-home Wi-Fi, it could drag down everybody else's performance. If you have a large number of devices that are trying to connect, that also impacts your performance. And so it masks a little bit of what the network is doing, because sometimes customers will look at their in-home performance and translate that as being poor network performance outside of their home, when really it is inside. And so educating customers on what their devices are doing, and different devices that maybe if your child has an old Nintendo, not the Switch, but something that could possibly drag down speeds within your home, take it off of your Wi-Fi, disconnect it. And working with our customers to optimize their performance in the house is something that we definitely focus on.
Yeah, I'd like to add, Rob's exactly right. We can do so good up to the house, but it is very important also to keep that experience continuing inside the house, which is actually one of the reasons why CableLabs invest more money in research and development, more in the wireless and Wi-Fi side, honestly, than the wired side at this point, because it is so important. We're heavily involved in 3GPP and the Wi-Fi Alliance and many other organizations to make sure that it's continuing to evolve and complementary to the cable industry. And there are, new advancements coming out, just like they are on the cable DOCSIS side, on the Wi-Fi side as well, with Wi-Fi 6. CableLabs actually also was very involved in opening up the 6 gigahertz channel so that we can actually now even have more frequency, more spectrum in our house to be able to attach our devices, which is only going to increase the capability for distributing, our devices inside the home.
No, absolutely. I know that was a huge win at the commission for so many folks in the Wi-Fi ecosystem when that band finally was allowed to open up, and the possibilities there are truly endless. I want to turn to you, Diana, because you live every day in this streaming universe and in a very unique part of it. And so I'd love to know what kind of conversations you've been having with your team about customer experience, and how, from the ad sales perspective, can you improve customer experience? Is it different levels of immersion, personalization, like you've discussed? Take us into that world a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. And then I'll just give a quick snapshot of fuboTV. So fuboTV actually started in 2015 as a streaming service for soccer matches, for international soccer, which is where the name comes from football, fubo. So that's the origin. And then today, really where we sit in the ecosystem is we're a virtual MVPD. So we carry now almost over 170 and more premium channels. We have many of the top, most of the top Nielsen rated networks. So we carry them as our content providers, and our consumers rely on us as one of their main sources of television content. And as I mentioned, we are viewed on this large screen and live. So that's kind of the snapshot. And then as far as from the ad sales perspective, the content providers, the programmers, they are running their own advertising, and then we actually insert on the 2 to 3 minutes of what traditionally would be local avails. We call them now partner avails, but that's where we insert our advertising over their streams. And the difference between a traditional MVPD is that we're actually selling national advertising in those slots, but otherwise that's really what we do. And then additionally, we have a streaming channel that we've launched, which is called Fubo Sports Network, where we have original content, a lot of live sports and original shows. So we kind of have both sides. So just to give a snapshot. So as I mentioned, for us to provide a seamless viewing experience overall as a company is extremely important, because especially for people who are enjoying sports, that's definitely something that people like to watch on a large screen. So we really have, I would say engineering is probably the largest department in our company. And our CTO, there's just very, very large numbers of people who are watching to make sure that the viewer experience is optimized at all times. They measure buffering and what are the things that could be impacting the viewer experience. And then, as I said earlier, from an ad sales perspective, this ad insertion process, we use server-side ad insertion, but it's dynamic ad insertion, and we're very careful and to make sure that is a seamless experience. And as you mentioned, we do very personalized content recommendation. We personalize the advertising, so that enables the viewers to have these optimal experiences. And what we've seen, and I echo what was said earlier about we definitely saw a very large increase of hours spent during COVID. It was up to 140 hours, monthly hours during June. Now we're down to about 126, but certainly not back to what it was pre-COVID. So we're certainly seeing that. And then interesting as far as concurrent viewing, that's actually something that in our world, consumers actually, the subscriber levels add the ability to have more and more concurrent streams. So at our basic level, basically you have 2 concurrent streams. At our highest level, you have 8, which can include 3 that are actually mobile. We call them on the go. Cloud DVR is another capability that we've introduced, so that you can watch your DVR anywhere. So those are the kinds of things that we work on as a company. As I mentioned, the multi-view, that's pretty much all our engineering and product team do, is think about better ways to improve. And then, as I said, on the ad side, we just really work. Of course, we work close. As I mentioned, SCTE is very important to us. SCTE markers to make sure that we're inserting the ads in the right spot and in the stream. So at a high level.
And we got a question from the audience that I think really plays into what you're talking about and trying to create this experience that is absolutely mimicking, or maybe even better than what a traditional paid TV operator could provide. We've heard a lot from traditional operators, a lot about their work to create more accessible content, more accessibility options. And I don't know that we've heard so much about that from the streaming side. And so Marion Hegarty is asking, hi all, how is streaming technology evolving to cater to populations such as the blind and visually impaired? What does that look like maybe for Fubo? And if any of the rest of you have seen anything out there, I'd love to hear your takes as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, just from our perspective, again, as a VMVPD, and I think, just as an aside, I think, the success we're seeing is really collectively in the industry, this, growth of multi-channel, or back to multi-channel. Of course, we mentioned earlier, a lot of these direct-to-consumer, single, content provider or single company apps that are getting launched as services. And then on the flip side, we see someone like even Netflix looking to launch a live linear channel. So I think, this balance between, that sort of multi-channel curated experience versus, I saw a quote about that, which someone said, to relieve the viewers of the burden of choice. Sometimes when you open up a fully on-demand service. So all that to say, so we carry all these networks, these national networks. And so, any of the requirements that they have, for the FCC as far as closed captioning and those kinds of things, we're obliged to, we provide that for them. So
can I add to that too? I think that's a great observation. Honestly, I think that more accessible content is easier with the streaming services because you actually can take advantage of additional accessible options on like tablets and platforms and Android and iPad devices, things like that, where they actually are doing great things with accessibility. So if you're, navigating a guide, you can actually get that automatic navigation feedback for, a visually impaired person. In addition to that, traditionally to stream like descriptive video services in a broadcast, you actually have to do that on the secondary audio channel, which is just not as intuitive or as easy to work with as opposed to just doing it all over IP streams. So in, the technology certainly does, I think, open up more opportunities to make that video even more accessible. So it's exciting for the future for those folks as well.
And then there's been a lot of advances, if I go back to some of my earlier experiences, whether, Telestream or IBM Watson Media, and sort of automated captioning and using, artificial intelligence and machine learning to improve those experiences as well. I think I agree. I think we're really in a time where there's great opportunity to improve that for all viewers. So.
Absolutely. That's I think one of the most exciting things about streaming is it's still so new, and the there's such a long way to go, and the possibilities are really whatever we want to come up with and what we can incorporate into these applications. And speaking of the future, Debbie, I know you have a really good understanding of what we can expect maybe in the next few years. I know you and the folks at CableLabs are really excited about what we'll be able to do in the future in terms of video and immersive technologies. So I guess, how Jetson-esque are things about to get, what are we about to see?
Probably even more than Jetson-esque. Like I said earlier, CableLabs looks to, out further into the 3 to 8 year time frame for innovation and really what's going to drive the requirements for the cable 10G platform. And one of the things that really the industry is excited about is the ability to observe immersive content, light field content, really on light field displays. And let me step back a minute and explain what a light field is, if you're not familiar with that term. Basically, if you look around right now in your office or wherever you're looking at this, you can see objects because there's light reflecting off that object and back into your eyes. That's basically how you can see it. If you shift your head a little bit, you can see around objects because now the light can get into your eyes. That's called a light field. All those light rays bouncing around in the room is a light field. Light field video is using 100 or more cameras to actually capture all those light rays. Then we're taking that light field video and we're delivering it back out in a light field display that is now emitting those light rays at a bunch of different angles. And so you can actually see volumetric 3D video. The objects are being recreated just as if they were real in space without having to wear the old traditional 3D glasses or the heavy VR headwear that people are having to wear today. Literally no glasses unless you need them like me, to just see bare eyes volumetric video. I've actually seen it in several different instances now. There's a lot of companies who are doing this in the market, and we're really excited about this. In fact, CableLabs last year, along with Charter Communications and Cox Communications, and then several others in this ecosystem, stood up this Immersive Digital Experiences Alliance idea, and we've been developing standards of how you capture this light field data, how you're going to deliver it over the cable network and any network for that matter, and then how you're going to display it on the other end. So I actually had one of the earlier 3D displays. CableLabs owns one, and we were able to take it up to the MediaCom 10G smart home and show it off. That was really cool. And then also you may have tuned into the SCTE conference, the expo a couple of weeks ago, where the keynote also demonstrated delivering this already over a 10G network. So cool stuff is coming along. It may not be for a few more years, but that's gonna be the next way that we are streaming this video content and consuming it in the house.
So I just wanted to add two things to that. Is for those who may have missed that keynote at the beginning of Expo, it's still available. So if you didn't get a chance to tune into the virtual Expo, you can still go to expo.scte.org today and register. Even if you never got a chance to register, you can still register today and view that demo. It's about 16, 17 minutes long. And it's just that narrowing of the putting a new application onto the network, and it's demonstrating yet again the resiliency of that network, that it was shown over a live HFC network that we had. It's the justification for going with a 10G platform. It's showing that you're going to need multi-gig connections to show these types of emerging technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage everyone to go and check that out if you haven't yet. It's different to hear us talk about these things, to actually see it in action. It really hits differently. And I think, when we talk about all these technologies, we want everyone to be able to experience them as quickly as possible. We want everyone to have the connectivity capabilities to be able to access it. But there are still so many that don't have the capabilities yet, and maybe won't for quite a while. And so we got a question in from the audience, and audience, we have about 10 minutes left. So if you do have questions for our lovely panelists, I would encourage you to get them in. But Latanya asked, how are networks performing in lower income communities at this point in time? Are those some of the ones that are maybe more prone to the challenges of connectivity that we were seeing earlier during the pandemic? Latanya pointed out that some are having to experience long wait times for their children to access their virtual classes. So I'd love to hear any takes on that. And I guess a wider question of how we can continue to foster closing the digital divide while pushing forward to these next generation technologies.
I'll start. And in some of the lower income areas, in particular for Cox, we have something called Connect to Compete, which gives those families an opportunity to be able to have internet access for a very low cost. And in some cases where because of COVID, the family didn't meet the criteria for Connect to Compete, but they still did not have access, they were being granted access so that those students would be able to still access the classrooms. I think where we are seeing more of a challenge, which could be synonymous with lower income, but really it's more in the rural areas where maybe we aren't built out, but there are still students out there that need to connect, and trying to work with the CARES Act dollars to be able to build out, but that takes time, probably as the person that was asking the question was alluding to. And working with some of the schools to partner where we can to bring Wi-Fi into the community. So I sat on an advisory council for a school district in the Northern Virginia area, and talked about options for being able to make sure that the students that may be in more rural areas where we were not could have access. And that may mean hotspots. That could mean bringing in a Wi-Fi bus until we can actually get built out, the network built out to where those particular areas are. So those are just a couple of things that we're looking at, and definitely looking to bring network to those areas, because it's COVID right now, but it can be something else. And it could be that school districts decide that they want to still offer some type of virtual learning versus brick and mortar learning. And so we have to make sure that we are staying in front of that and being able to ensure that we're getting network to those homes that don't have it.
And, I guess thinking about the future, this is an attendee that is also looking at the possibilities and keeping the cable industry competitive. They ask, what is the future of DOCSIS development looking like in order to keep it competitive with other emerging technologies like 5G and fiber? And Chris, I know you're DOCSIS all day long, so I'm sure they'd love to hear more about what's coming with DOCSIS 4.0 and 10G.
Yeah, and I definitely want to do a shout out to Debbie at CableLabs as well with the development of the specification. And it's on the road, it's on the pathway for realizing the 10G platform. So it's the specification is out. Vendors can build to that spec. We've recently at SCTE made it an ANSI standard. Testing and certification will begin on that standard. So it gets us to multi-gig connections, but also greater capacity and greater reliability. So it's another step down the road to the multi-gig connections that will support all of these applications that we haven't even dreamed of yet. So Debbie, did you want to add?
Yeah. So to add to that, remember that the cable network is really a hybrid fiber coax network. So it is very, very fiber heavy. And in fact, it's even, you know, we're going, we're going more fiber deep every day. And that's what's really enabling us to get to that 10 gigabit per second, that 10G speed. And so it's a combination of fiber solutions. It's really a whole toolbox, if you will. I mean, we're heavily involved in PON technologies and fiber technologies. Also, I also want to mention that we don't necessarily always compete with 5G. In fact, we're very complementary with 5G, and we're doing a lot of research. I mean, the way 5G is going to work is to put a lot of little mini cells out there, and they need to then be connected to a wired network to get back to the internet, basically, and the DOCSIS network can actually support that. So there's a lot of overlap and actually collaboration and cooperation with 5G technologies, not so much competitive. Also, many of our cable operators are also mobile operators too. So it's even more important to just start merging all of those back offices and cores. And that's a lot of the other research that CableLabs is involved in.
Absolutely. Yeah. All those lines between what a cable operator looks like and what they're involved in, it's all blurring. And that just makes our jobs more exciting than ever. Yeah. And I guess, you know, we're running out of time here. I'd love to do a little bit of a lightning round question for you all. You know, you guys are on the cutting edge and you're always keeping your eyes open for new innovations. So I'd love to know what products or vendors or technologies are you all keeping an eye on, or just some that you've been really thoroughly impressed by over the last few months?
Well, I'm gonna just have to say light field displays and light field capture and capabilities. And if, like I said, you can go out and buy today a Looking Glass Factory display that gives you 3D imagery without having to wear glasses. It's really pretty cool. And there's just more to come.
So I was mulling over this question, and sorry, Sarah, I really couldn't come up with just one, so I'll just say two really quickly. The first being, you know, telehealth services, I just think is really taking off. Again, it's been accelerated with COVID. Just all of the services you can now receive in the home without having to go to an emergency center or a hospital, and it's serious attention from the operators to team with the health officials. It's an entire ecosystem of its own, of being connected in, not only with the doctor's offices, but having the sensors you need in the home, and then also connecting in with the insurers, because, you know, whoever is going to pay for the service. So that's the first one. The other one is I'm really interested in seeing how the smart city space is taking off. Just think of all the different sensors and monitoring you can do within a city, you know, whether it's the transit systems, whether it's energy, bike lanes, what have you. And if you can collect all that and use AI ML algorithms against that to come up with reports and automations that can make cities run more smoothly.
So I am interested in seeing how this actually will transform our education system. And I think looking at right now children on something like this, a Zoom, but in the future, they could really have a teacher that appears to be in the room with them. And I think as I was talking with some of the panelists, they said maybe not even a teacher, but the person that was the inventor there in the room with them explaining the theory. And I thought, you know, how cool is that? And so it is the Encyclopedia Britannica. Half of the people on here probably don't even know what that is, but it's that coming to life and being right there in the room with the students, and that is pretty exciting to me. So I'm looking forward to being able to see that.
Yeah, and just you know, I think everything that is mentioned, it's true. It's really, you know, someone mentioned the Jetsons, and you know, I think Debbie said it's beyond the Jetsons, and that's really true. I mean, things like you know, in terms of viewing, you know, content viewing, television viewing, voice activation is really a huge thing. Obviously, Comcast and Altice have done quite a lot around that. And then, in sort of the streaming CTV universe, one thing that we're very interested in is, this is less of a new technology than a process, but, creating standards, so the IAB, the Interactive Advertising Board, the Freewheel Premium Video Council, the Trade Desk, finding, standards and measures for the, streaming TV universe that again, get us, create this premium experience for our viewers and advertisers, all our partners.
Fabulous. Well, I want to thank all of you again for participating in this wonderful discussion. And, let's send it on back to Mary for the next part of this wonderful program. Thanks, everyone.
To Sara and our great panelists, thank you for such a stimulating discussion. We'll take a very short break now as we get our second panel situated. Feel free to stretch your legs, grab a beverage, take a bio break, but please be sure to return here right at the top of the hour for the start of our next session. In the meantime, to try to keep you glued to your seat, I'm delighted to share with you a brief look at some of our amazing WICT Washington, D.C. Baltimore chapter activities over the past couple of years. This sizzle reel highlights the many enriching opportunities for education, information, networking, and fun that are just part of a WICT membership. So enjoy the video, and I'll see you back here at the break. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program will start again momentarily. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the host of WICT Check It Out 2020, Mary Pratt Henaghan.
Thanks everyone for returning to our 2020 Check It Out event today. I'm your host, Mary Pratt Henaghan. In the last hour, we learned of the many exciting developments underway to provide the best possible user experience for all of our streaming customers. In the hour ahead, we'll turn to what this could mean for you and your career. As before, we'd be happy to have your participation in this session via any questions you might have. You can pose them to our panelists by clicking on the Q&A function on the Zoom menu on your screens. We're calling our next session, Building a Career in Streaming Media. To lead that discussion, I'm pleased to introduce a young woman who has returned to the Washington, D.C. area fresh out of film school in Los Angeles. Myava Mitchell recently joined our WICT Washington, D.C. Baltimore chapter. Before her film school odyssey, she worked as a publishing technician at BET. We're so happy to have her back in our area and leading our panel this afternoon. Here to introduce our panelists and get the conversation rolling, please welcome Myava.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, everyone, and thank you, WICT DC Baltimore, for having me. As Mary said, my name is Myava Mitchell, and I will be your moderator for this panel. So let's start by introducing our panelists. We have Ms. Leerone Anolik. Leerone is a strategy and operations manager at Google. She provides thought leadership, insights, strategic and operational support to Google's global business development team. Prior to Google, Leerone held a number of roles in iHeartMedia, where she oversaw the digital revenue management practice. She also worked as a media planner for Universal McCain Israel, managed major advertisers' media budgets, and television advertising campaign. We also have Ms. Holly Bazemore. Holly Bazemore leads the AWS Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning team for government regions. Holly has over 20 years of technology operations, project management, communications, and leadership experience, and aims to empower and delight her customers through technology. We also have Mr. Steve Harris. Steve Harris is an international subject matter expert, author, and thought leader who serves as the Executive Director of Education and Business Development for SCTE-ISBE. He is responsible for overseeing the architecture and evolution of education programs, professional credentialing, and customized career progressions, as well as business development and partnerships for his organization. And finally, we have Ms. Renee Houch. Renee Houch leads CRI's highly regarded research team in its work analyzing media and telecommunications trends and vetting candidates. She's a veteran of the executive search industry and joined Carlson Resources Incorporated in 2001, where she identifies and recruits exceptional senior level talent for media content companies. And Renee is also exceptionally knowledgeable about current issues in the industry. So I would like to welcome you all. And again, we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come speak with me. And I'm looking forward to hearing all of you guys' take on streaming media. So let's dive right into questions. Let's first start with Leerone. And please, anyone else, if you have anything else to say, please feel free to chime in. So Leerone, how would you suggest someone get started in streaming media considering everything that's going on in 2020?
Thanks, Myava. So first, I just want to thank everyone for being here and thank you for hosting me. And I will apologize if there's any background noise because there is construction going on, which is, I guess, the life of working from home in 2020. I'll first do a quick shameless plug before I answer your question. I'm also a board member of One Day Immersion, which is an organization that connects students that are interested in media, tech, and entertainment with media executives. And so if there are any recent grads in the audience, check us out, onedayimmersion.com. We have an event coming up on Friday, which is our flagpole event, and is all about providing opportunities for students and recent grads to learn about the media industry. But now I'll sort of answer your question. So other than finding resources like ODI, I think 2020 is definitely not an easy year, right? Looking for a job is never easy, but 2020 has really sort of, I think maxed us all out. ODI's theme this year is actually breakthrough the brilliance of resilience, because resilience this year is really important, right? Resilience is about how we all respond to and recover from stress. And there is a lot of stress, and looking for a job is stressful. I will say that. But I think, in terms of looking for a job and in streaming, and there are so many opportunities right now, it's try to stay positive, say yes to opportunities. There's a lot of upside actually with virtual working from home right now. A lot of companies are not considering location as an issue anymore, right? So that opens up a lot of opportunities without relocating. Companies are offering flexible work schedules. I have 2 kids at home, right, that don't have school full time right now. And my company is okay with that. You can network with everyone without having to go anywhere, right? And so while there is video fatigue, it's still a little bit easier to get people. You can always offer a phone call instead. You can, I had someone do a virtual coffee chat with me, and she actually sent me a coffee gift card, which I thought was really, really sweet, right, over email. So there are definitely those opportunities. And the last thing I'll say is that we're about to close 2020. And so there are probably a lot of companies right now that are planning for 2021. Figure out with your network where are companies in that planning cycle, and just stay close to those opportunities, right, as they come up. Some might not be hiring right now, but come Jan 1, they'll suddenly get budgets and there will be opportunities. So ask those questions.
Absolutely. And do you suggest like a certain person to reach out to within the companies as far as like executives or anybody specifically?
I would say, and what we've seen from ODI execs and students, I would say reach out to anyone that you can, right? So also HR, because they're obviously closer to opportunities, but hiring managers, execs, peers, people that you've known in the past, people that can connect you to someone, because you really can't, it's really hard to tell where that opportunity is going to come from, right? You might talk to someone and tell them what you're interested in, and they might know someone that can help you get there.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Renee, do you think that you need a college degree for this industry? And if not, are there any sites or sources that you recommend to learn the craft and improve on your skill set?
Yeah, thank you. Every client's a little bit different, in terms of some people want a degree, some don't. Overall, I haven't seen as much of a request for a degree as the actual experience, whether it's marketing or sales or finance. A lot of companies, want that specific experience. Where we have run into issues with a degree is a lot of times, as people want to get promoted internally. So if there's an internal candidate that has a degree, you know, and meets all those requirements, and we're bringing someone in from the outside that doesn't, that's where it can kind of be a problem. So we've had to justify, you know, why to hire this person. But in general, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have one, but it's not, I mean, I'm sure, you know, certain functional areas more than others probably, you know, require it. But in general, all of our clients say they like it, but it's kind of preferred. So it's not going to necessarily stop you most of the times from getting that job.
Right, right.
You know, in terms of kind of the skills and all that, I think it's all about right now learning and education. So everyone that's on this panel and all the audience, right, this is one way to sort of learn about what's going on. I think you need to learn what the trends are, you know, what's going on. And just like earlier today, what companies are coming together. I think you really have to stay on top of all of that. So I always say to people, you know, like Leerone just mentioned the one-day immersion, you know, there's stuff going on this week. There's like a stream TV conference. There's a future Digiday future of TV. They're all free right now. So that's the beauty of COVID, is you can go to a lot of these free virtual events. So I think the more you can immerse yourself in the industry, and then of course, if you're an engineer, you know, SCTE, if you're an HR person, there's like right, Steve, there's a shout out, Steve, there's C2HR, you know, there's ProMax and CTAM for marketing. So I say to people all the time, you really have to know what's going on. You have to have your pulse on the marketplace. And the way to do it is to get entrenched. And then also emails, you know, whether it's CTAM Smart Brief or look at Synopsis, or I like, what's my other one? I'm looking here because I don't remember the names, like Video News and Fierce Video. Like these are all emails you can get daily that are going to tell you the trends of what are happening. So just learn and educate yourself the most that you can, and you can do it all for free.
Absolutely. And so since we brought up Steve, hi, Steve.
Hello.
How do you suggest someone in the industry stay updated on their skill set? I mean, Renee gave us some great sites to look into and how to stay updated, but how do you think that someone should stay up on skills specifically?
All right, well, I'm going to be a little biased here, and I'm going to say join WICT or SCTE, right? Actually, I think it's very important to belong to an organization like WICT and SCTE because of the immersion of all the information. We are like a clearinghouse of information, whereas publications, courses, webinars, expo, conferences. So that's where I would suggest starting. And we heard in the first panel, the industry is changing very quickly. And obviously we've heard of 10G and all that brings, but every area of the network is changing. So there's an opportunity to update your skills in all kinds of areas. So whether that's, you know, frontline employees, we have a lot of frontline employees working with SCT to get educated. That could be folks that want to work in the access network. That could be folks that want to work at home. The network assurance teams, they could work at home, they could work remote. Or you have folks that work in the head end, the new data centers and the new critical facilities that we have. There's a vast opportunity to update skills. What we're seeing is really making sure you have the core competencies. So SCT can help you uplift that. We have a virtual learn platform, not just SCTE, but there's a lot of outlets for education. A membership will help you being members. Our membership, just to give you an example of SCTE, gets the access to micro lessons and not just technical. We have career development, leadership development. So there's a lot there for that. Our expo papers, you can go on to our expo site, access our papers. You can, like Chris was sharing earlier in the first panel, you can access the CEO panel. You can access a ton of content. So that's just a few examples. The chapters, SCT has 67 chapters, a lot of co-events with WICT, doing a lot of presentations for women in cable. I think they're excellent opportunities to network. I saw in the video, how can I network? There's tons of network opportunities. SCTE has a member connect program. You can connect with thousands and thousands of members. I mean, I could go on and on, but I would say I'll wrap up with saying here, hands-on is very important to up, you know, the skills. The knowledge is important, but what we see is the abilities and skills as well. So skills, knowledge, and ability. So we have lots of hands-on opportunities, and then professional certifications for that deep expertise. That's my thoughts there.
Nice. It sounds like a mentor would be great in this situation for this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
or
Absolutely.
SCTE or WICT, just someone who can guide you and give you advice when you need it. That sounds like you can get it from these organizations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I love it. So for Holly, hi. So we want to just, for people who don't really understand streaming media, it's fairly new. And so can you just give us like a clear definition on what streaming media is, and you know the difference between streaming media and other forms of media for people who need a little clarity on it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So streaming media is any type of multimedia. So the type of media hasn't changed. It's just the delivery of it has. So basically any type of multimedia that is being consumed as it's being delivered. So a good way to think of this is, you know, TikTok videos, or, you know, watching, insert your favorite content providers, you know, something through their app on your phone or your iPad or any other tablet device, anything coming through a Fire TV or Apple TV or Roku, or right, like think of all of the devices that have kind of come around to help us get content delivered to us. But it doesn't just hang out waiting for us. Until we select it, it's not actually being driven to our device.
So it's a difference from digital media because it's more multi.
Right. Digital media is being broadcast whether you're consuming it or not. You know, like there's a set schedule as you go out there, whereas anything going on with streaming, you know, the end user is driving the ship. You get to decide, you know, hey, I want to watch my favorite, you know, show right now, even though it's 2:20 in the afternoon and it actually airs at 9 p.m. on Sundays, but I wasn't available at 9 p.m. on Sunday. So here I am, I'm going to watch it now. That's streaming media.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So Renee, would you say that it's difficult to break into this industry, especially now in 2020? I mean, in the past, maybe it was a little bit different. So in 2020, would you say that it's a little difficult to break into it right now?
It's difficult. I think just the job market is a little challenging right now in general, but you know, companies are still hiring, and companies, when you still look at a lot of the, you know, whether it's the, you know, the TikToks, the Amazons, and Netflix, when you look at a lot of the companies, a lot of the people they're bringing on board still are coming from not necessarily having the digital experience. You know, a lot of them are still kind of coming from the traditional side. And I think it's really more about, I think the way to break into it is, I think the biggest roadblock people make is that they don't really research, and they just think, oh, I would be great at, like, let's say Netflix, and they're going to want me, and I'm just going to go and just, you know, kind of send my resume and not really prepare and things like that too. And I think that's the biggest roadblock people have. So I think to be able to do that, to be able to break in, you've got to be smart about it. You've got to, I always say it's like, you got to make your target companies, you have to research, and what you've been talking about, networking too. So I think it's more about really preparing and saying, I want to go to this company, learning about them and their culture and what they're looking for. Just a quick example, and Netflix is not a client, but I'm just using them because there's a lot of good stuff about them. They actually have a We Are Netflix site on, like, it's on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and it tells you all about who they are. And then they have a podcast that people talk about the hiring. And so, sorry, Holly, to use this as the example, but so you could really learn about people that got a career there, what they did, you know. So it's just anything that you do, I think you have to research it. And then back to what we were talking about earlier, networking, you know, find out, like you said too, like, do you know the hiring manager? Do you know somebody there? Use your LinkedIn contacts and get in there. So I don't think it's not a huge obstacle. I mean, there's still going to be some jobs where they want that experience, but a lot of times you can transfer those skills, but it's being smart about how you approach it and doing it in a very, very methodical way, and not just sort of winging it and think you'd be perfect to go there.
Absolutely. And that's a great lead into my next question. And this is for everyone. So what advice would you give newcomers in this industry? That was great advice right there, Renee. and things to look out for, things that they should keep their eyes open for, just for people in the audience to know.
Well, I can jump in if you want. I'd say I go back to belonging to a society or belonging to a group that we talked about. The SCTE itself has 67 chapters. It's you're thinking COVID, I can't go to a chapter. Our chapters are very active. They're doing a lot of virtual events. So really getting to those virtual events, if you can't make them, they're recorded and going to the recording. You can find out who these presenters are. Every one of our chapters, all 67, have chapter leaders. So right now you can actually participate in our chapters as a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. You can be on there as a liaison. I'll even include the industry events. There's a ton of industry events that have been archived. There's a ton of, just 1 hour webinars that you can do. I think there's today a ton of information that's available to a person to prepare themselves and to really understand the industry. And I'll wrap with, SCTE has developed their own certifications. You don't have to take one of our certifications to understand the job role. You can go onto our website. There's a job description. There's actually the competency document. What do I need? What kind of skills, knowledge, and abilities do I need to do that job? And say digital video engineering professional. That's right on our website. You can go through and it'll tell you exactly what you need as far as a skill set. And then you can use that to kind of guide your career or your learning path.
Great, thank you.
I'd also add to that. I think Renee and Steve are both emphasize the importance of doing the legwork. I think it's also really important to do sort of the legwork internally on yourself, right? So sort of spend time thinking through, what are you good at? Where do you add value? What have you done before that makes you different, right? It doesn't have to be like something super unique, but you have to sort of understand how to tell that story and also how that story matches against jobs that are out there. People will be happy to help if they understand what's your story and what you're looking for and why you're looking for that. In terms of what to look out for, I know, when we look for jobs, I think we tend to think about, we focus on getting the job, but we don't always think about, will I be happy in that job? Will I be happy with that manager? Will I be happy in that company? And I think, it's a tough job market and maybe we don't always have that opportunity, but do spend time researching that, right? And sort of thinking through, like, will I be happy working for that company? Is it a good sort of fit for me? Do they accept me as who I am? Can I be my whole self, right? You just want to make sure that whatever you find, right, you don't end up in 6 months just wanting to leave.
Right, absolutely. That's a great.
Glassdoor is great for that too. You can't take, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because there's going to be some disgruntled people, but you can get a theme of, oh, this company's great, but maybe they don't pay a lot, but the managers are great, or they pay you great, but the culture's not good. So, I think you can also look at that to kind of get a sense of the culture of a company. Again, knowing it's not the end all be all, but it can give you a sense of a company a little bit too.
Absolutely.
If I can just add one more thing, WICT has been really phenomenal at helping me personally in my career. And I would encourage people to take advantage of things like WICT and SCTE and other organizations to help expand that network. We were talking about networking earlier. But if you're sitting in the audience and you're in a non-traditional role, please know that that role is absolutely available in streaming media. I can tell you as an engineer, I sometimes used to struggle sometimes with some of the programming because I was like, well, what about engineer? Like, I'm not on the production side. I don't have anything to do with actually putting on the content. And I'm here to tell you, I actually do a lot more with how all of that content gets to you now from the cloud side than I ever did when I was actually working for a telco. So keep an open mind and really kind of do your research, right? Like, streaming media is being delivered from many, many different places. And from many different people. It's not traditional. It does not actually have to even come from a company. You can start your own, but you need your contacts. So make sure that you're being an active member in some organizations that interest you.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you all. So now we have a question from the audience. So it says, of course, many early career women are seeking to understand how to gain access to streaming media jobs. For women more advanced in their careers, what level of opportunity is there for leadership positions in this business? Are companies open to female leaders in this field? And how can someone be better prepared to assume a leadership role among streaming companies?
Yes, 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 yes. I think, you know, the same thing that opened you up to being a good candidate at any role, will, like whether at entry level or high level leadership, be your authentic self. Make sure you're paying attention to how you're showing up. You know, and again, with your network, you know, a couple of the leaders here have already kind of highlighted, before you walk in the door for that interview, do your research, know it a little bit about the company, talk to anybody you might know that's there or has been there, and make sure you're walking in with your eyes wide open. And when you sit down in an interview, remember, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Make sure that you don't accept a role that isn't actually the right fit for you, because you'll struggle to be successful, and it won't paint you in the best light. So take the opportunities that really feel like the right fit.
And I agree. I think there's a lot of opportunities for that, and very similar to what Holly said. You know, it's also about that networking and talking to people, but also showing that you're flexible and adaptable, and that all the the accomplishments that you've done, you just really have to. I think that's the biggest thing right now, is sometimes people just, you don't want to feel like you're boasting, right? You don't want to feel like I did this and that, but you also do have to. And this is, you know, I'm not trying to stereotype, but in general, because my boss has spoken about this a lot of women have a harder time articulating their accomplishments. Not everybody, it's not, you know, but it has been shown through research. So it's very, and I get that way when someone says sell the firm and why we should work with you, I can do it. But then they say sell yourself, and I'm like, you know, I get that sort of nervousness. So I think you have to really go in and talk about what you've done and how that's relevant to, it goes back to the research, what the company's doing, and sort of weave a story and bring that all together, because people want great leaders. And I think there's definitely a lot of space for that.
And just to add one more thing on Renee, you brought up an excellent point, right, of women, and this is backed by research, right, not always feeling comfortable talking about their achievements. A couple of years ago, 2 women at Google created this incredible initiative that has since pretty much caught fire. It's called I Am Remarkable, # I Am Remarkable. If you're not familiar for it, look for it. It's a 90-minute workshop that sort of talks about that and helps women improve that skill. And one key sentence that they mention, and I love quoting, is, and that was one of my biggest takeaways when I did the workshop, was it's not bragging if it's based on facts, right? So when you go in there, right, and talk about yourself, remember that what you're saying is probably not lies, right? You're probably talking about a project that you did, a team that you led, a promotion that you got, right? Something that you worked hard for and deserved. And I think and another second thing, a really important stat that they mentioned that I think is important for women is that women tend to apply to roles where we check every checkbox. And Renee, you can probably attest to that way better than I do. But men, I think, tend to apply when they hit 60%. So I think when you look at a job description, just remember that, and you don't have to tick every box. It's okay. Just, go ahead and apply.
So we should also aim for 60% as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to share. I definitely agree with that, because I travel a lot for SCTE and visit a lot of operators, and there are women in all roles, every facet of the network. And I don't think you should feel that job is not for you. I mean, if that's something of interest to you, you should go for it. I found that a lot of successful women in the industry are really aligned to the mission of that organization, and that's really the driving factor. being driven and organized and well-versed in the company that you're applying for, I think is key. Going back to our earlier conversation of just knowing where the whole industry is going and kind of knowing, how, where we are today and where we want to be. I think having that story presents you as a good candidate when you're applying for these roles.
Absolutely. So to what extent are companies seeking women to fill positions right now in streaming media? Are you guys aware of that at all?
We always present a diverse slate of candidates, with male and female and background, ethnicity and all that too. But there definitely, has been in certain companies a lot, they're not supposed to say it a lot of times, right? But there sort of has been more of that, like we would like to round out our executive team that might be all male or something like that, but we still, has to be the right person with the right experience. But there's definitely a lot more people wanting that, although they don't always say it.
Right. And so, Steve,
yes,
what is SCTE doing to promote technical skills development for women, not only in streaming, but across all cable industry platforms?
Yeah, so you mentioned a mentor program earlier. And so we have the Tech Connect mentor program where SCTE has been working with WICT and the actual, for that past 25 years, working with the women to pair up and coming women professionals with WICT winners, right? And that is really, I really think you need that because the industry is diverse. There's a lot going on, changes happening constantly. And we've been very successful at that program. And basically how it works is your companies, just say a Cox, a Comcast or a Charter, they would recommend candidates. So you can really go to your local HR and find out more information. Now, I will say the 2020 and the 2021 class is kind of spoken for, but the next class is coming up right before you know it, the 2021, 2022 class. So that's just one way, the mentoring program. The other thing that we've been doing, and I talked about professional certifications, is really pushing for more women to become professionally certified in our organization and in the industry. And so to date, we actually have 155 certified women in the last 5 years now have professional certification in telecommunications. So woohoo on that, right? Yeah. And what's exciting about that is half of them are on the fulfillment side, right? So these are folks starting earlier in the career. We are all about like a ladder, moving you to the next rung of your career. So as you start in fulfillment, maybe that's customer service, maybe that's tech support, maybe that's an installer and technician. We have women in all those roles, but they're starting and they're just at the beginning. And you can keep growing by going to the next. Okay, I'm an installer. Now I want to go into maybe business services. Maybe I want to go into a leadership role, but that's what our program is, right? Another exciting thing, Chris leads our standards program. You heard from our CTO earlier. We have 91 women in our standards program, developing telecom industry standards, which is very, very exciting, yes. Right? So that's a leadership role. That's a way to not only promote your organization, but promote yourself, get yourself out there. I think is very, very important to become successful. In speaking at events like this, very, very important. So we're excited about that. If you had a chance to attend our expo, we always have events for women in cable technology. We always have promote women like Stephanie Mitchko did an excellent presentation at expo. We have many women speak and present at expo. So just getting into a speaker role or getting yourself out there will help promote your career and get you to the next level in networking. And last, we had a learning and development event where we talked with many women leaders in the industry. We heard from Cox and Agnes over at Cox Communication. And we've heard from folks at Charter. Well, we're going to replay some of that in Argentina. We pulled together the session of international telecommunications Next week, I'm going to be moderating that with a group of women L&D, learning and development leaders in Argentina for the first time. So we're really excited. And we're working down there with Roberto Lopez at Telecom. They are the largest operator in Argentina. And we're just very excited to have women leaders from the United States presenting down there in Argentina. So I think there's a lot of ways to get the word out and promote women. I forgot about U.S. robotics, the U.S. First robotics, and starting women off in high school, in college. So, and we do that at Expo as well. So as of just a few of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, no, that's so exciting. Thank you for that, Steve.
Yeah.
So now we have a question from the audience. You mentioned networking and reaching out to people. What is the best way to make an introduction in order to successfully develop a relationship into a possible career opportunity? Great question.
I would just say, so it just was asking about how to get to know somebody.
To transition from a relationship to a professional, I guess.
Yeah, and because whenever I approach, as you know, I'm developing business, you know, I'm building new relationships too. So I always try and see if there's a common thread, like if there's somebody that we both know in common, if we both went to the same college, if we, you know, if there's some sort of interest that we both have that are similar. And it really, knowing someone in common goes so far. It's not going to guarantee you anything, but it sort of gives people that little bit of like, oh, this person knows them, so you know they must be pretty good. You know, so I think it's trying to build on that foundation. If you don't know somebody that knows them, then it's going back to, I think, what we talked about, that research piece, and look at what that person has been doing at their job. You know, look and see if they spoke at events, if you saw them speak, or something they talked about speaks to you. I just think there has to be a good reason other than just like, I want to network with you and I want to get, you know, I kind of look at that because when people reach out to me that I don't know, if they don't have someone in common, but they really put a lot of time and effort into it, it really makes you feel like, wow, this person really cares about what they're doing. They're really making an effort, so I want to help them. So I think, again, it's sort of that connections and doing your due diligence too, and finding something in common.
Absolutely. And so we have another question from, Holly.
I was just going to say what Renee said was really, really spot on. You know, most people I know get, you know, reach outs on LinkedIn from people that will be looking at something that's, you know, in my case, 10 years or more in my history from what I did, and be like, hey, I see you used to do XYZ. And I'm like, that has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing now. Like, how can I help you, sort of, you know, like if I even respond. So, you know, as with all things, use care, do your due diligence.
Absolutely. Thank you. Another great question. Should individuals fear when looking for jobs in streaming media that some of these streaming providers are flight by night and won't be around for the long haul?
So I'll share a little bit of personal experience. So I, at some point a couple of years ago, I was looking for a job and I put together a list of companies that I wanted to sort of work for and networked and all of that and interviewed, and then ended up taking a role in the same company. And then fast forward like to a couple of years later, 80% of those companies either did not exist anymore, or were not doing that great, were bought, right? So the pace of the industry does change really, really fast, right? And I think with COVID and everything that's going on, that might be even more relevant than before, and the pace might be even faster. But I will say that I don't think anyone will blame you for taking a job at a company that then for some reason did not succeed, right? Unless you're maybe taking the CEO role, right? But I think the job itself can still present opportunities, right? It can still be challenging. It can still provide enough skills and experience that you can then leverage. It is scary if you're looking for that stability, right? But I think, I don't know if there are many opportunities anymore, especially in media, to find that company or that job that you will be there for 20 to 30 years, right? I think that's that's just not as common anymore. And so even within the same company, and I work for Google, right? And so while we still think of Google as sort of newish, it's already been around for about 20 years, and many people in the company have been there for 15, 20 years. But they've changed roles constantly, right? We have, the joke at Google is that we have reorgs all the time. So even if you find a company that doesn't necessarily like go under, it still can change a lot, and you sort of just, you need to be adaptable and curious and just find your place in whatever new structure that comes along.
And I would also add to that too, where when I first started recruiting over 25 years ago, clients, like we would spend so much time going through someone's career history, and they wanted to know why they leave this job after 2 years or this, or why didn't that job work out for a year? And really the world has changed. COVID, first of all, is the one thing where nobody can, everyone, you can blame everything on COVID right now if you lose your job. But, in general, clients have been more open because they've seen so many companies that didn't make it, so there's not that stigma that there used to be. Can you tell I'm Italian? I'm talking with my hands here. There's not that stigma there used to be where they'd say, oh, a company didn't work, you weren't good. So I think, and to take the positive of it, like Leerone just said, like you took a risk in what you did and what you were able to accomplish, so you can turn that into a positive.
Yeah, I'll also add here, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So yeah, before SCTE, I spent time at Comcast, and when you do apply for a job and you get the job, it's not just come in, sit down, okay, I'm relaxed, I'm good to go. I was I would say, we used to have a saying, Comcast, faster, I'm a Comcaster, because there was constant change, right? And so I was constantly learning. You have to like to learn in this industry. So once you get into your company, prepare to continue learning. And I'll tell you, Comcast was excellent. They provided all the learning opportunities that you wanted. And so as long as you were going through and taking advantage of those, then you were very successful within the organization. There are folks that, again, I'm okay, I don't need to do anything else. Maybe not as many opportunities for them. Not that they didn't, they weren't successful. It's just, if you want to create an opportunity, you need to create it, and you need to take advantages of the things, like a Google or an Amazon or a Comcast will provide you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for that. So we have about a little over 5 minutes, so we're going to just keep going with the questions from the audience. Another question: what advice would you give to a person who wants to get into streaming media but needs help determining their transferable skill set?
I would say talk to people, right? People that you trust, either mentors or sponsors, former managers or peers that can sort of help you think through that. It is sometimes challenging to look at your resume and figure out like, how do I pull out like what I'm good at from here? So like find your tribe and have those conversations, and reach out to people in your network. It's also potentially good to check with HR people, if there are any in your network, or know anyone, that could also be a good check.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. And then you can also go back to what we talked about earlier too, looking at the specific, back to what Leerone said when she was looking at other jobs. I always say, pick those companies you want to work at, and then and then take those companies and then look at who you might know, or how, people's profiles. Like, let's say you're, an engineer, and then say, okay, I want to go look at what an engineer at Amazon's profiles look like. I mean, you can really use a lot of that and look and kind of see what people may have in common, look at job postings and what they sort of say they're looking for. So you can also do it that way too, kind of I always say a good old fashioned run the word cloud on a job spec and see what words come up the most and things like that too. So kind of see what other people, if there's a dream job that you have, what is that person's background like, and how can you then, what have you done that's similar that you can kind of transfer. But like Leerone said too, talking to a recruiter or someone in HR is helpful too, to help you sort of look at that. But, because it's always by function, it always varies a little bit.
Great, thank you. Steve, someone said, what is the name and the dates of the conference in Argentina?
It's actually next week. This conference is just for telecom. So it's not a public conference. It's for their organization, kind of like Comcast having their own conference. So unfortunately, this one is not available for next week. There is one available this week, but it's in Spanish. But feel free if you want to reach out to me afterwards. I can share what's coming up the rest of the year as far as conferences, and if you're interested in certain things, I can make recommendations.
Great, thank you. And so last question before we have to wrap up, what's the biggest lesson that you all have learned in this field, and what's some advice that you can leave some people with today?
Well, I'll share. When I was at Comcast, I met SCTE, and I guess the biggest advice I would give is put yourself out there. I actually spoke at a SCTE conference. I met a lot of people, and I tell you, over the years through the SCTE network, I have hundreds and hundreds of friends, colleagues, good friends, people I'd have over for dinner. But I think the most valuable lesson is networking and doing that, and helping one another. I think that's volunteering sometimes. This industry is not just 9 to 5. Volunteer, and there's different committees that you can participate in. SCTE is a board of directors. There's also regional representatives. There's chapters. You can get involved as a volunteer, which creates more opportunity, and it grows your network. So that would be my tip for the group.
Thank you, Steve.
And I would say that I've learned that it's okay to admit you don't know everything, especially in this new world when I didn't know, and I was kind of afraid to I don't want to ask a dumb question, but I kind of learned you can do all your research and prepare, but there's still things you don't know, and people are always kind of forgiving with that. So I learned to give just to be more open and just realize you don't have to know everything.
Absolutely, great note.
I guess one big learning for me, and something that I'm still working on throughout my career, is just reminding myself that it's okay not to know exactly what is my career path going to look like. You sometimes get those questions of where do you want to be 5 to 10 years from now? And I'm like, I don't know. And that's okay. I think it's, for me at least, it was important to understand, to recognize opportunities that are in front of me, and focus more on the next step and what I'm interested in doing, and what I'm interested in learning. And one piece of advice that I have that goes back to sort of the learning and research that we talked about is, I think, just be curious, right? I think it's a good way to get to know people, is just and companies, and just finding a job is just by being curious and asking questions and being authentic. And so I find that to be very helpful.
Great, thank you, Leerone. That was great.
And then I would add, I think for me, I had a really awesome mentor through WICT, actually. It really was a long time ago, but this is advice that I live by every day. And it's control what you can control, influence what you can influence, and let go of the rest. And if somebody who started out as an engineer where I controlled all the things, and then worked up through project management and then people leadership, I like to control. And when I'm not in control, I'm Irish Italian, I spin out of control, things get really fat, right? And Brad used to be like, okay, Holly, control what you can control, influence what you can influence, and let go of the rest. And it's something I still live by every day.
I love that. I'm gonna put that on a post-it.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
Great. Well, thank you guys. That's all the time we have. I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules again to talk with me for today. This has certainly been a profound experience, so I thank you for that. And now I'll toss it over back to Mary.
Thank you, Myava. And thank you to our great panelists for a compelling conversation about all the opportunities in streaming media. Lots of really good advice there. I hope you all enjoyed this session as much as I did. all of us at WICT DC Baltimore appreciate your participation today. I'd like to say a special thanks again to the sponsors of today's program, Comcast and NCTA, the Internet and Television Association. The great news about today's sessions is that they'll be available to watch again soon on our chapter's YouTube channel. So keep an eye out for an email with more information about that. In the meantime, you can find many downloads from our recent chapter events and subscribe to our channel on YouTube at WICT DC Baltimore. Today's program is just one of many engaging activities staged throughout the year by our WICT chapter. For more information on chapter activities, please visit our website at wictdcbalt.org. One of our special interests is coming up in a next chapter event, the third in a topic of our series, focusing on women in career transitions. The event is called Establishing Virtual Connections, and it's set for Tuesday, December 8th at 12 noon. So save the date and keep an eye out for more information coming on that soon. Thanks again to everyone who participated in today's panel, and thank you to you for joining us for our 2020 Tech It Out program. Stay well, and we hope to see you again soon.
I'll monitor the attendee room just to make sure that nobody else is in there. Should we promote Olivia or just keep her there?
Rob, we are